Lightning splits the sky above the Palace of Roquelaire. The doors swing open, heavy as stone, and you're carried inside. Banners breathe like lungs. Your veil trembles against your lips. It is the late 13th century. The kingdom of Avarennes gathers to crown a child, 9 years old, and a queen. The marble floor chills your knees. Incense curls in the air, thick as a shroud. At the throne, your father, King Renatus, waits. His beard is grey, his eyes hawk-sharp, his hand locked around a sealed scroll. Beside him, Lady Seraphine gleams in sapphire velvet. She does not blink. Your half-brother, Prince Alaric, restless in crimson and gold, lets wine stain his breath. Canon Mathieu, the palace priest, holds a prayer book, its corners worn soft, and behind you, Dame Zoria, your handmaiden, smooths your sleeve. Her touch steadies, then withdraws. The crown above waits like weather. The choir begins. Thunder presses the windows, and the veil, chosen for beauty, rubs your mouth into silence. What if your voice was stolen before it ever had the chance to be heard? Would you still be called queen, or only a vessel for other men's vows? Latin syllables echo through the nave. You are lifted higher. The sceptre set in your hand bends your wrist with its weight. Canon Mathieu asks the question, will you bear the burdens of Avarennes? But King Renatus moves your head for you. Your silence is signed into law. The scroll glimmers in his fist. Lady Seraphine adjusts the jewel at her throat. Alaric taps his boot, impatient. Izoria's thumb brushes your glove. The veil clings closer. Comfort becomes cage. The year is 1287, and the Palace of Roquelaire groans like an old ship. Oil touches your brow. For one moment you believe you might speak. Your name rises, but the net of silk catches it. Beyond the chapel doors, nobles gather for applause. Renatus steadies the sceptre. Seraphine smiles for the dukes. Alaric smirks like a torch about to catch flame. Isoria's eyes find yours, anchors in the storm. The crown descends, metal colder than marble, heavier than thunder. The choir swells, ribbons flare. Your breath fogs against the veil and returns to you. Canon Mathieu pronounces it. Queen Isolde of Avarennes, keeper of peace. The word peace rings thin, fragile as glass. Applause explodes, roaring, endless, like surf on cliffs. You lift your chin as taught, but your body trembles anyway. The veil presses harder, not fabric now, but commandment. Rain hammers the roof in time with the clapping hands. The doors to the great hall grind open. Celebration waits. Your breath seizes, caught mid-rib, broken before release. The veil holds. The thunder falls silent. And beyond the chapel, the spectacle sharpens its knives. The great hall of Roquelaire blazes with firelight. Late in the year 1287, banners drip with gold thread, and the treaty scroll lies unrolled across a velvet cushion. Nobles gather shoulder to shoulder, goblets lifted high. Musicians play, priests bless. The air thickens with triumph. At the centre of it all sits Queen Isolde, 9 years old, in ivory and pearls. The crown slips slightly on her brow. She does not move. Her veil hides the tremor of her mouth. King Renatus rises, scroll in hand. The parchment glows under torchlight, seal bright red, his grip unyielding. He speaks of alliances, of dynasties preserved, of futures secured. Every word nails another plank over his daughter's silence. The court erupts in cheers. Tankards slam tables. Lady Seraphine smiles, sapphire gown catching every flame. Prince Alaric leans back in his chair, crimson doublet gleaming, eyes fixed not on the treaty, but on the girl who must bear its cost. Canon Mathieu steps forward. His voice climbs over the din. God's blessing, the church's sanction, the people's joy. Behind the chant his hands tremble. Even he cannot steady the words. The scroll is lifted higher, parchment crackling like a banner. A weapon of ink and wax waved for all to see. Men roar approval, and women bow their heads. No one looks at the child queen. She sits in silence, small hands folded, veil brushing her plate of untouched food. The hall shakes with revelry, yet her silence becomes the loudest sound. Dame Isauria stands behind her, still as stone, eyes lowered, though she feels the tremor in her queen's shoulders. Outside the palace walls, bells ring. The city celebrates. Avaren has gained peace, they say. But peace was purchased with a child's breath. At the midpoint of the feast, the treaty is paraded. Renatus passes it from duke to bishop, from bishop to lord. Each places a hand upon it, swearing loyalty. The ink stains more than parchment. It stains the girl whose body sealed the bargain. Lady Seraphine whispers to a countess, voice as cold as glass. The future's secure. She does not glance at Isolde. She does not need to. Prince Alaric drains his goblet, laughter sharp as a blade. He watches the child queen as though the treaty is a promise made not with words, but with flesh. Canon Mathieu lowers his eyes to the floor. His lips form prayers, yet none reach the rafters. The music drowns them all. By nightfall, the hall glows with spilt wine and torchlight. Nobles cheer louder, their mouths red, their hands sticky with grease and drink. The scroll rests once more upon its cushion, sacred, untouchable, a relic of betrayal, blessed by every hand that touched it. Queen Isolde stares at it through her veil. It seems to breathe, to watch, to bind. Once scrolls carried stories of saints. Tonight, it carries her silence. The feast surges toward its end. Courtiers applaud, minstrels pluck strings with bleeding fingers, priests raise cups as if they too are drunk. And still, the girl queen does not speak. The final cheer breaks like thunder. The scroll is lifted one last time, held aloft in triumph. The crowd roars. The child queen lowers her gaze, and behind the velvet curtains of Roquelaire, where firelight does not reach, priests prepare darker rituals, rituals no applause can conceal. Winter of 1289 settles over Roquelaire, thick with frost that creeps across window panes. The great hall has gone quiet, but behind closed doors, whispers grow louder than feasts. In the queen's private chamber, the fire burns low. Lady Seraphine sits before her mirror, its silver frame heavy with jewels. She smooths her hair, adjusting a sapphire pin, her gaze fixed not on her reflection but on the small figure behind her. Queen Isolde, 11 now, curls into the corner, veil pooled like snow at her feet. The mirror catches both of them, one woman cold with power, one child hollowed by silence. Lady Seraphine leans closer to her glass. The mirror flatters her beauty, but every whisper scratches its surface. Rumours seep into the palace walls. The half-brother, the heir, his eyes never leaving the child queen. Prince Alaric prowls the corridors in crimson, his boots echoing like threats. He's 19, golden-haired, handsome as a torch lit too close to silk. He speaks loudly at supper, his laughter spilling over the rim of his goblet, but at night the halls carry softer sounds. The scrape of his steps near her door, the hush of a hand against a latch. Canon Mathieu hears confessions in the chapel. His voice is low, his brow furrowed, but when the whispers reach him, he does not name them sin. He clasps his prayer book tighter, as though the leather itself could silence truth. He blesses the child queen with a trembling hand, and then blesses the brother who shadows her. God's silence becomes his own. Dame Isauria, the handmaiden, keeps her own record. She has no ink, no parchment, only memory. Each tremor in her queen's hand, each tear quickly hidden, she seals away as though she were a ledger herself. But she does not speak. She knows what happens when servants give voice to what nobles bury. By midwinter, the mirror in Seraphine's chamber begins to change. A crack snakes across its edge, hair thin but sharp, as if the whispers have struck it. She touches the line with her jewelled finger, and for the first time, her reflection does not obey. Behind her, Isolde's eyes are downcast, but in the fractured glass they appear wide, watching. The palace chapel grows colder. Confessions multiply, but truth rots beneath incense. Canon Mathieu chants blessings while rumours coil in shadows. Alaric's name is never spoken in the open, yet every courtier tastes it on their tongue. The child queen withdraws further into silence. At feasts, she sits beside her father, face pale beneath the crown. Renatus boasts of alliances, of peace, of a dynasty secure. But his daughter eats nothing. Her hands fold in her lap, trembling against the veil that once crowned her innocence. Behind the banquet doors, the whispers grow claws. Alaric and Isolde, two names braided together in secret. Some say she is cursed. Others say she is marked. The words slip from servant to priest, from priest to chamberlain, until they nest in every corner of Roquelaire. Dame. Isauria listens as lords murmur in passageways. She feels the weight of their glances, the way they avoid her eyes when she enters with the Queen's cup. Her silence, once loyalty, now brands her complicit. In the winter of 1289, the palace itself seems to tilt. Mirrors crack, prayers falter, steps echo like secrets dragged across stone. Lady Seraphine powders her cheeks, painting over what she refuses to name. Prince Alaric drinks deeper, laughter sharper. Canon Mathieu prays harder, words emptier, and the child queen, Queen Isolde, grows smaller in her own crown. The whispers will not stop. They crawl beyond the chamber doors, out into the corridors where nobles pass. They cling to tapestries, ride the breath of courtiers, coil into the rafters, and by spring they will no longer be whispers, they will be echoes the court cannot contain. Spring of 1290, the kingdom of Avarin dresses itself in celebration. The palace of Roquelaire spills open, banners lifted high, streets perfumed with blossoms. Drums thunder through the city, and the people are told they march for continuity, for divine blessing, for the future of their queen. But the truth walks hidden behind the parade. The court decrees are read aloud in the square, each word stamped with the king's seal, each phrase turned into law, marriage alliances, heirs promised, obedience demanded, and at the centre of the decree, Queen Isolde, still a child, no longer treated as girl or daughter, but as vessel. The priests bless her role in front of the crowd. They speak of dynastic continuity, their voices booming from cathedral steps. They do not mention her age, her silence, her eyes that never lift from the ground. Instead, they raise a cradle draped in silk, paraded as symbol of fertility. The crowd cheers, but the cradle is empty. In the great hall, feasts spill over. Wine pours, goblets clash. Roasted meat fills the air. Nobles boast that the dynasty will not falter, that the child queen has secured their future. Yet at the high table, she eats nothing. Her veil brushes her plate, her hands folded beneath the cloth. Every cheer only sharpens the hush that surrounds her. Lady Seraphine applauds with measured grace, her sapphire gown glittering under candlelight. Prince Alaric lounges near her, laughter bold, his gaze fixed on the child who cannot laugh. Canon Mathieu sits lower, lips moving in prayer, though even his prayers bend to decree. The cradle is displayed again at the midpoint of the ceremony, lifted by bishops, carried through the hall as if it were relic. The nobles stand. They bow as though to a relic of saints, and the child queen is forced to bow with them, bowing to her own silence. Outside, the city mimics the ritual. Cradles carved in wood are hoisted on shoulders, paraded through the streets. Children clap, mothers weep, fathers lift their sons to see. The people believe they witness promise, but the promise is carved from the body of a girl. Roquelaire records it all. Clerks dip pens into ink, lines filling ledgers. Births, deaths, alliances, names stacked upon names, treaties upon treaties. Yet the ink never writes the silence of its queen. The ledgers are heavy, but none hold the truth. As spring fades to summer, the rituals repeat. Every feast begins with the blessing of the cradle. Every decree signed with the same seal. Every smile at court practiced, rehearsed, forced. The child queen sits through them all, veil lowered, crown gleaming like a shackle. The cradle becomes more than symbol. It becomes cage. Its silk lining, once gentle, now feels like command. The nobles cheer, priests bless, clerks record, but none speak of the weight on the girl who sits unmoving at the centre. By the end of the festival season, Roquelaire shines brighter than ever. Gold leaf on arches, tapestries renewed, music echoing late into the night. To the world Averin thrives, but beneath the music silence grows heavier. Behind the laughter, fear settles deeper. The ledger closes with a snap. Another year sealed, another feast recorded, another decree marked, yet no ink captures the truth, that behind all the processions, the blessings and the empty cradle, a child queen's silence is the true foundation of this dynasty. And when silence becomes law, collapse is never far behind. The year is 1292. The cloisters of Roquelaire lie hushed, their stones wet with spring rain. Between the arches, secrets move quietly, folded into scraps of parchment, hidden beneath wax seals. Not treaties now, letters. Letters meant to save a queen. Dame Isoria, 16, slips through the passageways with her head lowered. Her plain wool dress blends with shadow, her hands clutching fabric tighter than prayer. She's begun to write, not with ink, but with memory. Each tremor in Queen Isolde's hand, each night she does not sleep, Isoria carries like words no one else will say. Tonight she hides a letter beneath the altar cloth, hoping some monk, some bishop, some soul braver than she will find it. But letters vanish. Clerks collect them. Canon Mathieu, who should have been their shepherd, delivers them into the king's hands. His prayer book closes over them like a coffin lid. He tells himself it is obedience. He tells himself silence is survival. But the silence grows heavier with every page he hides. The veil returns in new form. Once white silk at a coronation, once a bridal covering paraded at feasts, it is darker now, woven thicker, drawn longer across the child queen's face. When Isolde moves through the hall, it trails behind her like shadow. No longer veil, shroud. Isoria dares once more. She presses her hand against the queen's sleeve as the nobles cheer in another banquet. Her whisper barely stirs air. I will not let them bury you alive. But even loyalty carries risk. Within a week she is struck for lingering near the queen's chair, told to keep her eyes down, told that servants do not speak. Her silence is enforced with fear. Canon Mathieu watches from the chapel. He sees the child queen kneel, veil heavy over her bowed head. He hears the words of confession spill from her lips, words not meant for public ears. She whispers of fear, of shame, of Alaric's shadow. He raises his hand in blessing and says nothing. His silence is the church's silence, and the church's silence is law. By midsummer, rumours of resistance flicker. A cousin whispers of annulment, A bishop mutters of intervention, but every rumour is crushed before it breathes. Renatus signs another decree. Seraphine tightens her grip on Jules. Alaric sharpens his laughter into cruelty, and the veil grows darker. One night, Isoria leaves another letter in the cloister. This one she marks with a cross, desperate for heaven's eye to notice. The next day it burns, ash curling in Canon Mathieu's hand as he whispers the psalm of obedience. Ash drifts into the cracks of the stone floor. No one ever knows. The shroud spreads wider. At court, nobles bow deeper, but their eyes avoid the queen. At chapel, priests chant louder, but none say her name. In chambers, servants glance at Isoria, then glance away. Even their pity is dangerous, and so the rebellion dies not with a sword, but with a silence that eats parchment, that swallows whispers, that binds veil to face and turns it into shroud. By year's end, the resistance is gone. No letters remain, no prayers answered, no allies left. Isoria keeps her memories, locked inside, a ledger unwritten. Canon Mathieu keeps his silence, heavier than his cassock. And Queen Isolde, still only 13, moves beneath a shroud that is no longer fabric, but fate. The crack of rebellion closes like a slammed door. Only the curse remains, and in Roquelaire, silence grows louder than any scream. Autumn of 1294 settles heavy over Roquelaire. The great hall fills again, but this time the air is colder, weighted not with celebration but with suspicion. Nobles press shoulder to shoulder, clergy line the walls, every gaze turns toward the dais where a child queen must stand. Queen Isolde enters, veil trailing, steps slow across the marble. Her frame is thin beneath heavy velvet, the crown tilting as though it no longer fits. Behind her, torches blaze, dozens of flames carried high in iron brackets. Once symbols of triumph, tonight they burn like accusations. King Renatus rises, his scroll of decrees clenched in his fist. He declares lineage secure, alliances unbroken. But the words fall flat, scattered by the echo of a rumour. Every lord, every priest, every servant has heard it. The queen is with child, and no one believes it, a child of peace. Lady Seraphine hides her face behind jewelled fingers, sapphire veil trembling with contained fury. Prince Alaric, crimson-clad, sits forward. His smile flickers in torchlight. Mockery, pride, threat, all at once. Canon Mathieu clutches his prayer book, knuckles white, lips moving without sound. The torches sway as the doors close. Whispers curl like smoke. You feel them press against your skin. You stand before them, the crown heavy, the veil pressing harder. Your silence speaks louder than any denial. At the midpoint of the gathering, the cradle is brought forth again, silk-lined, raised high as proof of continuity. But the nobles no longer cheer. They murmur. They stare at the queen who cannot meet their eyes. The torchlight flares, casting shadows across her face, shadows that whisper shame. King Renatus insists the dynasty is safe. His voice cracks against the rafters. No decree can erase the truth now. The truth swells beneath the velvet, fragile and undeniable. Lady Seraphine drops her jewelled hand, eyes cold as mirrors shattered. She knows what this means. Betrayal not only of flesh, but of legacy. Alaric's laughter cuts through the silence, sharp, obscene in its triumph. The torches tilt, and for a moment the hall looks like it burns. Canon Mathieu bows his head. He does not defend, he does not accuse. His silence condemns as surely as any word. And you, trapped within the crown, the veil, this gaze of hundreds, feel the hall close in. Each cheer from years past now turns to scorn. Each blessing now becomes curse. The veil tightens. Your breath clouds against it. The torches flare brighter. Nobles demand answers. Priests chant prayers not for you but against you. The cradle gleams in candlelight, empty, damning. Renatus slams his decree upon the table, parchment snapping like thunder. But no one listens. The dynasty he swore to protect now rots from within, and its rot has a face, a child queen too young to fight, too burdened to flee. The hall erupts, some voices jeering, others silent in fear. Alaric rises, torchlight gilding his hair like a crown he doesn't yet wear. Seraphine turns away, refusing even the sight. Isoria, silent in the shadows, clutches her hands until her nails draw blood. Mathieu whispers one last prayer, unheard. The spectacle is complete. Not feast, not festival, trial. The child queen stands alone, silent stretched thin as glass, and then, as the torches sway and the hall tilts with noise, a hand lowers the veil. Not bridal, not holy, burial cloth. The hall thunders with applause meant not to honour but to bury. And beneath the shroud your breath breaks once more, cut short before it can escape. The year is 1296. The palace of Roquelaire stands colder now, its eastern wing sealed with iron locks. Windows are shuttered, corridors dusted over, the doors barred as though silence itself has been walled in. Clerks return to their ledgers. They dip quills into ink, but the names they write are not all the names that lived. Some lines are erased, some spaces left blank. The chronicles speak of peace, of alliances kept, of a dynasty untouched. But they do not speak of the child who carried its weight. Queen Isolde vanishes from the records. Her name appears once, then not again. The veil that once crowned her becomes memory, shattered, scattered, only fragments in the glass of old mirrors. Lady Seraphine's gaze remains in those shards, hard as jewels, but her voice is never written again. Prince Alaric's laughter echoes still in the rafters, though no scribe dares to write what it meant. Canon Mathieu's prayers lie buried with his silence. Damia Soria keeps her memories alone, a ledger unwritten, until she too disappears from ink. The cradle that was raised in parades gathers dust in the vaults. Its silk rots, its wood warps. Once a symbol of fertility, it now holds only emptiness, and the torches that once blazed in triumph burn low in sconces, their soot blackening stone. The people are told that Avarennes thrives, that the dynasty stands unbroken, that the crown rests safely on the heads of kings. But in the sealed wing of Roquelaire silence presses like a second skin. Every step echoes with ghosts. Every corridor breathes with stories cut away. You walk those halls in thought. You see the veil on the floor, torn, not whole. You see the mirror cracked, reflecting not faces but fragments. And in those fragments, eyes wide, lips trembling, you see the child queen still staring back. Her silence has not died. It lingers in the walls, passed down through the women who were told to smile, to bow, to vanish. It lingers in the men who chose not to listen, who inked false peace into ledgers. It lingers in the generations who live beneath laws built on her breathless crown. History calls it continuity. But silence has continuity too. It spreads, line to line, name to name, until even centuries later the echo can still be heard. If this unsettled you, share it with those who dare confront history's darkest truths. Subscribe for more journeys into the shadows, because the question is not only hers to carry, it is ours. What if the curse was not hers, but ours, to never listen to the silenced?